like to boast,
I don't like boast,
but I am very good at finding things to be annoyed about.
but I'm very good at finding things to be annoyed about.
It is a real specialty of mine.
It is a real specialty of mine,
can hear 100 compliments and a single insult.
and I can hear 100 compliments and a single insult.
And what do I remember?
And what do I remember?
The insult.
The insult.
And according to the research, I'm not alone.
And according to research, I'm not alone.
Unfortunately, the human brain is wired to focus on the negative.
Unfortunately, the human brain is wired to focus on the negative.
Now, this might have been helpful when we were cave people trying to
This might have been helpful when we were cave people
avoid predators,
trying to avoid predators.
but now it's a terrible way to go through life.
But now it's a terrible way to go through life.
It is a real major component of anxiety and depression.
It's a major component of anxiety, depression.
So how can we fight the brain's negative bias?
So how can we fight the brain's negative bias?
According to a lot of research, one of the best weapons is gratitude.
According to a lot of research, one of the best weapons is gratitude. Gratitude.
So knowing this, I started a
So knowing this, I started
new tradition in our house a couple of years ago.
a new tradition in our house a couple of years ago.
Before a meal with my wife and kids, I would say a prayer
Before a meal with my wife and kids, I would say a prayer
of thanksgiving.
of thanksgiving.
Prayer is not quite the right word.
Prayer is not quite the right word.
I'm agnostic.
I'm agnostic, so
So instead of thanking God,
instead of thanking God,
I would thank some of the people who helped make my food a reality.
I would thank some of the people who make my food a reality. Agnostic.
I'd say I'd like to thank the farmer who grew these tomatoes
I'd say I'd like to thank a farmer who grew these potatoes,
and the trucker who drove these tomatoes to the store
and the trucker who drove this tomato to the stores,
cashier who rang these tomatoes up.
and cashier who rang these tomatoes up.
And I thought it was going pretty well, this
And I thought it was going pretty well.
tradition.
Rang up, ring up. Total and record this means of a cash was ring up a sale, ring up, ring up, ring up. Who rang these tomatoes up?
Then one day, my 10-year-old son said,
Then one day my 10-year-old son said,
"You know, Dad, those people aren't in our apartment.
You know that those people are in our apartment.
They can't hear you.
They can't hear you.
If you really cared, you would go and thank them in person."
If you really care, you would go to them and thank them in person.
And I thought, that's an interesting idea.
That's an interesting idea.
Now, I'm a writer, and for my books, I like to go on adventures.
I'm a writer, and for my books, I like to go on adventures,
Go on quests. So I
go on quests.
decided I'm going to take my son up on his challenge.
I'm gonna take my son upon his challenge.
It seemed simple enough,
It seems simple enough.
and to make it even simpler,
To make it even simpler,
I decided to focus on just one item.
I decided to focus on just one item.
An item I can't live without.
An item I can't live without.
My morning cup of coffee.
My morning cup of coffee.
Well, it turned out to be not so simple at all.
It turned out to be not so simple at all. Take my son up on his challenge. Take my son up on his challenge. I think I'll take him up on his offer. Take him on his offer. Take him up on his challenge.
This quest took me months. It took me around the world.
This quest took me months. This quest took me around the world.
Because I discovered that my coffee would not be possible
Because I discovered my coffee would not be possible
without hundreds of people I take for granted. So
without 100 people I take for granted.
I would thank the trucker who drove the coffee beans to the coffee shop.
So first, I would thank the trucker who drove the coffee beans to the coffee store.
But he couldn't have done his job
But he couldn't have done his job
without the road. So I would thank the people who paved the road.
without the road. So I thank the people who paved the road.
And then I would thank the people who made the asphalt for the pavement.
And I would thank the people who make the asphalt for the pavement.
And I came to realize that my coffee, like so much else in the world,
And I came to realize my coffee, like so much else in the world,
requires the combined work of a shocking number of people from all walks of life.
require the combined work of a shocking number of people from all walks of life.
Architects, biologists, designers, miners, goat herds, you name it.
Goat herd, you name it.
I decided to call my project Thanks 1,000.
I decided to call my project Thanks 1,000.
Because I ended up thanking over 1,000 people.
Because I ended up thanking over 1,000 people.
And it was overwhelming, but it was also wonderful.
It was overwhelming, but it was also wonderful.
Because it allowed me to focus on the hundreds of things that go right every day.
Because it allows me to focus on the 100 things that go right every day,
As opposed to the 3 or 4 that go wrong.
as opposed to three or four that go wrong.
And it reminded me of the astounding interconnectedness of our world.
And it reminded me of the astounding interconnectivity of the world.
I learned dozens of lessons during this project,
I learned dozens of lessons during this project,
but let me just focus on 5
but let me just focus on 5.
today. The first is look up.
The first is look up.
I started my trail of gratitude by thanking the barista at my local coffee shop, Joe
I started my trail of gratitude by thanking the barista at the local coffee shop.
Coffee in New York. Her name is Chung,
Her name is Chang.
and Chung is one of the most upbeat people you will ever meet.
Chang is one of the most upbeat people you ever meet.
Big smiler, enthusiastic hugger,
Big smiler, enthusiastic hugger.
but even for Chung, being a barista is hard.
But even for Chang, being a barista is hard.
And that's because you are encountering people in a very dangerous state.
Because you're encountering people in a very dangerous state.
You know what it is? Pre-caffeination.
You know, pre-caffeination. Pre-caffeination. Pre-caffeinate. Postpone action. Put off things until.
V. To delay or postpone action, put off doing something until you've had coffee.
Pre-caffeination. Pre-caffeination. Procrastination, caffeine. I was doing nothing until pre-caffeination.
So, Chung has had people yell at her until she cried,
So Chung had people who yell at her until she cried,
including a 9-year-old girl who didn't like the whipped cream design
including a 9-year-old girl who didn't like the whipped cream design
that Chung did on her hot chocolate.
that Chung did on her hot chocolate.
So I thanked Chung, and she thanked me for thanking her.
I thanked Chung and she thanked me for thanking her.
I cut it off there. I
I
didn't
cut it there.
want to go into an infinite thanking loop.
I didn't want to go to an infinite thanking loop. I cut it off there.
But Chung said that the hardest part is when people don't even treat her like a human being.
The hardest part, Chung said, is that people even don't treat her as a human being.
They treat her like a vending machine. So
They treat her like a vending machine.
they'll hand her their credit card
They hand in their credit card
without even looking up from their phone.
without looking up from their phone.
And while she's saying this, I'm realizing
While she's saying that, I'm realizing
I've done that.
I've done that.
I've been that a-hole.
I've been that a-hole. A-hole. A person's anus, stupid, irritating, and compatible a-hole. Anus. A-hole.
And at that moment, I pledged, when dealing with people, I'm going to take those 2 seconds
At the moment, I pledged when it comes to dealing with people, I'm gonna take those 2 seconds
and look at them, make eye contact,
and look and make eye contact
because it reminds you you're dealing with a human being
because it reminds you you're dealing with a human being
who has family and aspirations and embarrassing high school memories.
who has an aspiration, embarrassing high school memories,
And that little moment of connection
and that little moment of connection
is so important to both people's humanity and happiness.
is so important to both people's humanity and happiness.
All right, second lesson was smell the roses and the dirt and the fertilizer.
The second one was smell the roses and the dirt and the fertilizer.
After Chung, I thanked this man.
After Chung, I thank this man,
This is Ed Kaufman.
Ed Kaufman,
And Ed is the one who chooses which coffee
and
they serve at my local coffee shop.
is the person who chooses which coffee they serve at my local coffee shop.
He goes around the world
He goes around the world
to South America, to Africa, finding the best coffee beans.
finding the best coffee beans.
So I thanked Ed, and in return, Ed showed me how to taste coffee like a pro. And
And show me how to taste coffee like a pro.
it is quite a ritual.
It was kind of a ritual.
You take your spoon and you dip it in the coffee, and
You take a spoon and dip it in the coffee,
then you take a big, loud slurp, almost
and then you take a big loud slurp.
cartoonishly loud. This is because you want to spray the coffee all over your mouth.
Because you want to spread your coffee all over your mouth. Loud slurp. Looking noisily as a result of sucking air into the mouth at the same time. Slurp.
you have taste buds in the side of your cheeks,
You have taste buds in the side of your cheeks
and the roof of your mouth.
and the roof of your mouth.
You gotta get them all.
You gotta get them all. Taste buds.
So Ed would do this, and his face would light up, and he would
Ed would do this, and his face would light up.
say, "This coffee tastes of Honeycrisp apple
This coffee tastes of Honeycrisp apple.
and notes of soil and maple syrup." And I would take a sip, and I'd say, "I'm picking up coffee. This
And I would take a sip, and I say, I'm picking a coffee.
it tastes to me like coffee."
It just tastes me like coffee.
And but inspired by Ed, I decided to really let the coffee sit on my tongue for 5 seconds.
So inspired by Ed, I decided to really let the coffee sit on my tongue for 5 seconds.
We're all busy, but I could spare 5 seconds
We're all busy, but I can spare 5 seconds.
and really think about the texture and the acidity and the
I think about the texture, acidity,
sweetness.
sweetness.
And I started to do it with other foods.
And I started to do it with other food.
And this idea of savoring is so important to gratitude.
This idea of savoring is so important to gratitude. Savoring is too. Savor.
Savor. Psychologists talk about how gratitude is about taking a moment and holding on to it.
Psychologists talk about how gratitude is about taking the moment and holding on to it as long as possible.
As long as possible, and slowing down time.
Slowing downtime. Time during which a machine is slowing down time.
So that life doesn't go by in
So life doesn't go by
one big blur,
in one big blur.
as it often does.
In one big blur. Cannot see clearly blur in one big blur. Life doesn't go by in one big blur. Just blur.
Number 3 is find the hidden masterpieces all around you.
Number 3 is find the hidden masterpieces all around you.
Now, one of my favorite conversations during this year
One of my favorite conversations during this year
was with the guy who invented my coffee cup lid.
was with the guy who invented my coffee cup lid.
And until this point, I had given approximately 0 thought to coffee cup lids.
Until this moment, I have given approximately zero thought to the coffee lid.
But I loved talking to this inventor, Doug Fleming, because
But I loved talking to this inventor, Doug Fleming,
he was so passionate. And the blood and sweat and tears he put into this lid.
because so passionate and the blood, sweat, and tears he put into this lid.
And that I had never even considered. He says a bad
That I had never even considered.
lid can ruin your coffee.
A bad lid can ruin your coffee.
That it can block the aroma, which
It can block the aroma,
is so important to the experience.
which is so important to the experience.
So
Blood, sweat, and tears.
he's very innovative. He's like the
He's very innovative.
Elon Musk of coffee lids.
He's like the Elon Musk of coffee lids.
So he designed this lid that's got an upside down hexagon. So
So he designed this lid that's got an upside down hexagon.
You can get your nose right in there and get
You can get your nose right in there
maximum aroma.
and get maximum aroma.
And so I was delighted talking to him.
So I was delighted talking to
And it
him.
made me realize there are hundreds of masterpieces all
And this made me realize there are hundreds of masterpieces
around us that we
all,
totally take for granted.
all around that we take for granted.
Like the on-off switch
The on-off switch
on my desk lamp has
on
a
my desk lamp
little indentation for my thumb
has a little indentation for my thumb
that perfectly fits my thumb.
that perfectly fits my thumb.
And when something is done well, the process behind it is
When something is done well, the process behind it
largely invisible.
largely invisible. Yeah.
But paying attention to it can tap into that sense of wonder and
But paying attention to it can tap into the sense of wonder.
enrich our lives.
And enrich our lives.
Number 4 is fake it till you feel it. By the end
Number 4 is fake it until you feel it.
of the project,
By the end of the project,
I was just in a thanking frenzy.
I was just in a thanking frenzy.
So I would get up and spend a couple hours. I'd write emails,
So I get spend a couple of hours and read,
send notes, make phone calls, visit people to thank them for their role in my coffee.
to thank them people for their role in my coffee. Frenzy. Frenzy.
And some of them, quite honestly, not that into it.
And some of them I honestly not that into.
They would be like, "What is this? Is this a pyramid scheme?
It's a pyramid scheme? What is this? Is this a pyramid scheme? Pyramid is a pyramid scheme? Pyramid scheme?
What do you want? What are you
What?
selling?" But most people were surprisingly moved. I
But most people were surprisingly moved.
remember I called the woman who does the pest control
I remember I called the woman who does the pest control
for the warehouse where my coffee is served.
for the warehouse where my coffee is served.
I'm sorry, where my coffee is stored.
Where my coffee is stored, I'm sorry.
And I said, "This may sound strange, but I want to
And I said, this may sound strange, but
thank you for keeping the bugs out of my coffee."
I'd like to thank you for keeping the bugs out of my coffee.
And she said, "Well, that does sound strange,
That sounds strange,
but you just made my day."
but you just made my day.
And it was like an anti-crank phone call.
It was like anti-crank phone call. Crank.
And it didn't just affect her, it affected me.
It didn't just affect her, it affected me.
Because I would wake up every morning in my default mood, which
I wake up every morning in my default mood,
is grumpiness.
which is grumpiness.
But I would force myself to write a thank you note and then another and then another.
But I would force myself to write a thank you note, and then another, and then another.
And what I found was that if you act as if you're grateful,
What I found was, if you act as if you are grateful,
you eventually become grateful for real.
you actually become grateful for real.
The power of our actions to change our mind are
The power of action is to change my mind.
astounding. So often we think that thought changes behavior, but behavior very often changes our thoughts.
Behavior very often changes our thought.